Hi, my name is Benjamin Watson. You're tuning into another 5-minute devotional, and I'm excited to continue this Courage 2-part series, and this is part 2. So if you haven't listened to part 1, I challenge you to just go back really quick and listen to the 5-minute devotional before this, where I talk about Acts 27, because it leads in to where we are right now in Acts 28, and that is after Paul had sailed through the storm, sailing to Malta, and he had reached the shores, and that's where we'll pick up, and we're going to title this one, Keeping Courage. Well, like I said, we're going to title this one Keeping Courage because I believe that Paul demonstrates a type of courage that many of us need to see within just society now, within just maybe what you're going through. We've talked about past circumstances. We've talked about future circumstances. But I want to talk about what's going on right now, the reality of what you're living in. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's stress, maybe it's a financial burden you've been praying God would lift. And I just want to talk about that. I want to talk about how we've seen people within our own lives maybe slander us, talk about us. Maybe you find your worth in what other people think about you. But what we see here demonstrated in Acts 28 is that although the opinions of Paul were high going into the shores of Malta because he had promised that God would be faithful and save them, and he did, he looks great, he's the hero. But as soon as something else starts to waver, everyone begins to point the blame at you, or at Paul in this case. And so I want to dive into that, but I want to read this paragraph first. Stop letting people's judgments of you determine your future. This means you may have to leave people behind along the way. Friends now may fade, and you will realize these friends were what was holding you back. Also understand that although you will leave people in your past, God has someone and something greater for your future. And so let's dive in to Acts 28. The first verse says, once safely on shore, we found out the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built us a fire and welcomed us all because it was raining and cold. So we see this moment of joy. They have gone through just pain. They've gone through if you didn't look back on Acts 27, they sailed in just storms. They had to throw things off the boat to secure their boat. They began to try to take things in their own hands, but then God came in and rescued them, and he was faithful just as Paul had promised he would be to the people. And they are now here on the land of Malta. And I want you to first think of, before we read these next couple verses, are there people, or maybe it's the devil, friends, family, that are within your life right now that are slandering you, that are casting shame and judgment upon you for maybe the things that you've done? Maybe they know nothing about you. Maybe you're the person casting the slander. Think back on that. And are you the kind of person that you let their judgments of you, you let their thoughts of you determine your future? And what we see here in the next couple verses is Paul completely doing the opposite. Keeping faith, keeping courage that I wish I could do. I'm not the example here because I know that in a moment like this, coming out of a storm, the first thing I would say is when something else bad happens, I say, God, why? Come on. You said that you were going to be faithful, and now we have to do something else. Like, God, did you not already prove yourself enough with the storm, and now this is going to happen? And so this is what I'm talking about. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a viper, which is a snake, driven out by the heat, fastened itself to his hand. Didn't just bite his hand, but fastened itself, probably releasing venom, completely biting into his hand. When the islanders saw the snake, so this is the moment of judgment, when the islanders saw the snake, instead of saying, oh my gosh, let's help him, oh my gosh, what a miracle it was that they landed safely, let's help them, they immediately cast their judgment, and they say to each other, this man must be a murderer, for though he escaped from the sea, the goodness justice has not allowed him to live. So they believe that the inevitable is now happening, that he is dying. And I also wonder how many people within that, they say the islanders, but I wonder how many people that sailed on the boat were thinking the same thing. That were going, you know what, he was the issue. He was the reason why the boat was crashing. He was the reason why this happened. And they are immediately casting their judgment as well. Because I believe that there's people in your life that do that to you. They walk through a hard season with you. You save their butt. You put your life out on the line, and then they immediately cast judgment on you when something else happens. And they cast the blame and put everything upon you. But then we keep going. And this is the amazing part. But Paul shook the snake off of his hand into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead. And to me, I just focus on verse 3 and 4, where they casted that judgment. And I wonder how many of you are walking through a season where you need to have courage like Paul. You need to have faith like Paul. That stop looking at your circumstances and saying, oh my gosh, it's just another thing. God doesn't love me. Stop believing the words that other people are saying. And so I wrote, the key here is Paul didn't lose faith. Don't let the devil's voice or the people's voices around you continue to drag you down. And I just believe that within our society, some of you are doing that. I do it too. My views and opinions of others are too weighty within my life. Their words are so weightless. We need to look back and remember the promise that God put on our lives within the season. Maybe you're a missionary and you're going overseas and you've been there for 2 years and you've been disconnected from your family. Or maybe you're someone who's studying abroad. Maybe you're someone who, like me and my wife, we moved here to Texas. Or maybe you're just in a hard season where God said, I want you to tighten down on your budget, whatever it may be. And you start to view the opinions and people around you instead of looking back and remembering the promise that he had on your life. God's promise is always greater than the words of others. And I want you to remember that today. I know that we are all within seasons of life that are different, but that is a truth that will remain true no matter the season, no matter the time. So going into 2020, keep courage and remember, God's promise is always, 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 always greater than the words of others. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's devotional. I am excited to continue throughout 2020. And so with that, please like this video. It'll push it up to where other people can see the video that need to see it, but also will promote growth on this channel. I am excited, like I said, to continue. This has been an amazing journey for me and my wife as we dive into just YouTube and creating these. So again, thank you so much for your support. Have an amazing day, and remember to keep courage.